My name is Michael Beck, a resident of Scotch Plains, New Jersey, and one of the state leadership co-chair of Principles First. Please welcome Christie, the 55th governor of New Jersey, a leader known for candor, conviction, and results. He guided his state through some of the most challenging moments, from economic recovery to rebuilding communities after Superstorm Sandy. He built a reputation for tackling tough problems head-on, insisting on accountability and speaking plainly to voters across the political spectrum. Before his 2 terms as governor, he was a United States attorney, championing the rule of law, ethical government, and ensuring criminals were brought to justice. Governor Christie is recognized for his authenticity and willingness to engage people in town halls, debates, and as a contributor on many news outlets. He is never shy in dealing with difficult conversations and unpopular decisions, as evident for his strident support of the Dallas Cowboys in a state that supports the Giants and the Eagles. We are honored to welcome him back to the Principles First stage. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Christie.
Governor, thanks for being here.
Great to be here, Heath. Thanks for having me.
It's always good to have. I think this is summit number 2 for you, so it's a pleasure to have you back. I don't want to have too much time today, but I want to get through. I mean, there's just so much happening in the world, in the United States. Got sports betting has been on the table for you, and also your conversations with Lindsey Graham. I want to get to all of it. But I think first off, people maybe just be curious, what are you up to these days? I know you're teaching at Yale.
I teach at Yale. I have my own consulting firm with 5 folks that were in my administration. I have a law firm as well. I'm on 4 corporate boards, including, most importantly, the corporate board of the New York Mets. So that's my most fun board. So that's all that stuff keeps me pretty busy.
That's great. And you know, I think that's such a number of hats that you wear. And you know, you now at ABC, I think, more than many former governors, have sort of retained an element of seriousness and vocal relevance with respect to where the country is. How do you retain that perspective? And were you shaped a lot by your time as governor in New Jersey?
Well, yeah, I don't think you can have a job like governor of New Jersey and not be really affected in lots of different ways by my experience there. But in the end, it goes back to what my mother told me when I was a kid, which was be yourself, because then tomorrow you don't have to try to remember who you pretended to be yesterday. And that's really been the way I've run my life. And I think the relevance portion is just that I say exactly what I think, and I put up with the ramifications of that later, not before. I don't think about, okay, how's this going to affect me before I say it. I say what I really think, and then sometimes it works out really well, and sometimes, not so much. So, but I think people in general, even people who don't like me, and there are a few, they listen. They still listen. And, when they're quoting stuff back to me on Twitter or someplace else, if I respond at all, my response is, it's so great you're listening, because they quote stuff back to me. And if you really don't value what someone says, why would you even spend the time to listen?
And for me, I mean, I was long a person who was a card-carrying member of the Republican Party. And so many of these folks, you talk about saying what you believe instead of what is popular at any given time. You can count them on one hand these days. The number of people who, when you listen to them as a leader, they're giving you the unvarnished opinion that they have, that isn't run through a poll test. I mean, you look at any of these guys, and you talked about this recently and made news about the things that folks like Lindsey Graham will tell you in hushed
private, yeah.
conversations in private about what they really believe is just so different from what they're saying in public. Why is that? What's the driver of that decision, and what makes someone make a different decision?
Because they care more about their title than they care about their job or their character. I mean, like, in the end, Lindsay's a perfect example, but I could have given a number of other names. You know, I think Bill Maher told me after the show that he just assumed I wouldn't give a name. He asked it to embarrass me. And he said to me side stage later, he goes, I asked it to embarrass me, and then you embarrassed Lindsey Graham. And, you know, the fact, though, is that guys like Lindsey and others, their whole life is wrapped around their title. And they can't envision a life where they don't have that title. So they say to themselves, okay, well, I'll make this compromise and that compromise and that compromise and that compromise, that rationalization to keep the title. And then after a while, it's like they say, well, I go up to the line, but I don't go over it. Once you do that enough times, you don't know where the line is anymore. And so you're lost. And so, you know, that's somebody who I first met Lindsey in 2010. I first met Lindsey. I got introduced to him by John McCain. And who he was and the things he said when he got introduced to me, and when he ran for president in 2016, and we were in the race. He got out very early, but we were in the race for a while together. The stuff he said back then versus what he says now is just breathtaking. So that's why he came to my mind first, but there could have been any other nominees for that, including Marco Rubio. So there. Made some more news for you today, Heath.
You know, the compromises and the chaos, you made a recent comment, I think I saw on ABC, where you said these compromises and the chaos that ensues, you know, it can be entertaining for the party and for anyone who supports the president or anyone. It can be entertaining in the moment, but that chaos distracts from the issues. And then pretty soon, you don't know where you stand on any of the issues, and you're not delivering results for the actual people. Say more about the point that you were making.
Look, I think it's really simple, right? And we all in this room, I guarantee all of us in this room have had this experience. When you get into an argument regarding Donald Trump with someone who is like-minded to you on issues, right? They say, yeah, I know he's not a good guy, and all the stuff he says, it's embarrassing, but I agree on the issues with him. And that's their rationalization. But what's been proven now in the last year is the act gets in the way of accomplishing the issues that people who make that compromise want accomplished. And what's the proof of that? You know, I was saying this to Heath on the way over here that, you know, when we got together last year, for folks like us, it was a pretty dark time. You know, amongst Republicans, the president's approval was 92-5. And most of the 5 were in this room. Right? So, but you look at an AP poll that came out just 10 days ago. His disapproval among Republicans is up to 27% among Republicans, right? People are waking up to this. And I think, Heath, I said what I said last week because that's what's waking them up to it. They're saying, hey, wait a second. I supported this guy and compromised my principles to support this guy because he was going to make the economy better. But it's not. And his job approval on the economy right now across all demographics is 39.62. Then they said, well, I've supported him because of immigration. And we wanted him to close the border, and he did. But then you see the conduct, the character, or lack of it, playing itself out in Minnesota and in other places all across the country. And people say, well, I didn't vote for that. And now he's ruining the immigration issue for the Republican Party. And on immigration, He's 3861. Imagine a year ago, if I had sat on this stage, or the one we were in Washington, and told you that Donald Trump was going to be 23 points upside down on immigration with the public, you would have thought I was nuts. But for people who care about those issues, about immigration, about the economy, trade, he's upside down on all of those things. And that's people saying, we elected you to do these few things, and you are off distracting me and the rest of the country with your games and your language and your lack of character. And so that's why what I was trying to say on ABC last week was, people don't like to hear this, but the single most important issue when you're voting for someone, especially for president, is character. That's it. And by the way, the party that we've been a member of, we set up all these litmus tests. Oh, he or she's not perfect on this, on this, on this. And that's how you wind up where we are today. Because nobody can be good enough. Nobody checks all the boxes. So what did we do? We nominated and elected an entertainer. Right? We wanted to be entertained. Well, it's like any show that's on TV for a long time. The ratings start to go down. And the ratings are going down. So for everybody who is principled enough to have shown up here and works with this group, I want you to think about where we were a year ago, where we are now, where we're going to be 9 months from now. Don't move. Don't move. It's moving back to us. Don't move. You have, I believe, withstood the worst part of the storm. And it's coming back our way. So we just have to continue to stand up for the things we believe in. And to me, there's nothing more important than the character of the people you vote for. And this president is the single greatest example of that, probably since Lincoln. He always wants to be compared to Lincoln. There it is.
I want to switch gears and talk about some of those issues where, even a lot of folks in Trump's base have started to turn on him. And, with your background as a prosecutor, I wanted to focus on the Epstein files, because this has been just fascinating for me to watch as Trump is basically, I think the MAGA base, to a large degree, I didn't think it was possible, but I think they are starting to lose trust and faith in him on this issue. How do you see what's happening right now in Congress? Is this a function of how Trump has staffed up DOJ and how it has been undermined under his leadership? Would we have more answers if it was someone else that was being more transparent? Like, will the American people ever get answers on these Epstein files?
Maybe. But look, I think I'd argue, let's differentiate between answers and prosecutions. So I'll do answers first, then I'll do prosecutions. On answers, it was a bunch of rich, predominantly white guys who are masters of the universe, have made more money. Like, think about what all of these men who have been exposed so far have in common. They're professionally successful, they're extraordinarily wealthy, and most of them are incredibly geeky, right? Like, these guys could not close the deal ever in their lives, right? Could not close the deal. So now they become really rich, and they're thinking, I'm really rich now. I got to find out how to close the deal. And they look at Jeffrey Epstein and they go, he knows how to close the deal. I'm going to hang with him. What more do you need to know? The character of these men is awful. And so on what we need to know, may there be more names and all the rest of it? Yes. But you're going to hear the same story over and over again. Every time a new name comes out, like I saw the video of Les Wexner's video of his deposition where he was talking about, like, I didn't know that Jeffrey Epstein stole $1 billion from me. Like, you know what? The scary part is I actually believe him. Like he had that much money that he just didn't miss it. And his relationship with Epstein was so important to him that even if he knew, he didn't care. Right? So you're going to see more of these kind of guys, right? Now, on the prosecution front, though, this goes way back. I was the U.S. attorney in New Jersey when the Epstein case started. I want you to think about that. We're talking about 2007. I mean, 19 years ago. And I remember when the plea agreement was reached. You know, all of us amongst the U.S. attorney community would talk with each other about cases that were going on in other places. When I saw that Alex Acosta came to a plea agreement with a guy who was accused of pedophilia, where he turned the case over from the feds to the state, and they sentenced him to 18 months, but he could be out every day. He just had to sleep there, like as if it was a hotel. And he went to work every day. And a United States attorney under George W. Bush agreed to that deal. And a Justice Department agreed to that deal. And so, you know, Trump is just a continuation and expansion of that problem. Epstein got Alan Dershowitz and a whole bunch of other lawyers who did whatever they did with Alex Acosta, who again, this would have disappeared. It disappeared all through the Obama years. You didn't hear Eric Holder ever talk about Jeffrey Epstein, did you? Not once, right? So all through the Obama years, it disappears. Trump comes in. The only reason it comes up is because Trump makes Alex Acosta the labor secretary. Great decision. So he goes into hearings, and the Democrats bring up Epstein and that plea deal. And then Acosta has to resign. And so it bubbles back up again. And now Trump's, and I was around at the time, so I know how angry he was. I didn't understand exactly why he was that angry, but he was really ripped. And the reason I know about it is because he offered me labor secretary first, and I turned it down because I didn't want to go in his cabinet. And he then gave it to Acosta. So when Acosta caused all these problems, Trump came to me and said, it's all your fault. If you had just said yes, I would have never gotten this guy, and none of this stuff wouldn't have come out. I still didn't understand why he was so mad. I didn't know about his relationship with Epstein at that point. And really, very few people did. So my concern is that for most of the people who can be prosecuted, should be prosecuted, we're beyond the statute now. You need to know this stuff goes back 19 years. And so, and every one of those administrations, Bush 43, Obama, Trump 45, Biden, and Trump 47 all own it. Now, Trump has made the Justice Department unrecognizable, and we would know more of the information about these people if people that were not bought and paid for by the president were not running the Justice Department. But that's what we got. And I think it's amazing that Tom Massey and Ro Khanna and others have gotten done what they've gotten done in light of all this. It really is. So, because you remember, Pam Bondi and Kash Patel both told us a year ago there were no Epstein files. There was nothing in there. Now there's 3 million pages plus, right? So I guess it just showed up. You know, maybe it was like in an office at the FBI that no one had looked in for a while, you know? So we got to give credit. Like, Congress deserves almost no credit for anything right now. I mean, seriously, in that same AP poll, Heath, you know what Congress's job approval is? This is impossible in one respect.
2?
4%.
2. Oh.
4. So I think two things. My God, how could Congress only have 4% approval? Then I think, how do they even have 4% approval? Like, who are those people? Like, I'd love to interview those people. Like, okay, so you think Congress is doing a great job? Yep. Tell me why. Like, I think those would be some fascinating answers, who those 4% are.
It's Nancy Mace voting for herself.
Yes, could be. Could be Nancy. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't want to be in Congress anymore.
She doesn't even
think
like
about
Congress.
how bad Congress has become when Marjorie Taylor Greene goes, "No, this is too much of a shit show for me. I'm out of here." Like, right? I mean, it's incredible. She's like, "No, this has gone too far. This is absurd. You can't imagine you could live that long." But in the context of all that, Ro Khanna and Tom Massey, without the two of them, we wouldn't know what we know now about the Epstein files. We wouldn't. The Trump administration would have never released it.
I'm going to ask one more, but then we'll just open it up for audience questions. So be thinking and getting your questions ready. I noticed a couple days ago when Mike Seelig, Trump's appointee at the CFTC, came out with this statement that sports gambling was somehow a derivative financial instrument. Yeah. You took issue with that, as did to his credit, I think Governor Cox did as well.
He did.
I mean, this is a real issue. I don't think it's made it into sort of the mainstream political discourse in a way that some of the other hot button issues do. But I mean, this is a real sort of, I mean, this poly market thing where you can bet on like when it's going to rain today, and like, is this? I mean, it's certainly not a financial derivative, but I mean, you've thought a lot about this issue recently. I'm curious what your reaction was to that statement and how you think about it.
Well, you pretty much saw it, right? I mean, my reaction was like, okay, so a bet on, for instance, how many points the Patriots will score in the Super Bowl, over under, is now an investment. It's a derivative investment. Like, only in Trump world. Now, remember, first off, why this is happening. And it's the confluence of everything in Washington right now. It's the Trump family and money. So Polymarket and Kalshi, the two biggest ones, have a ton of money. A lot of people have invested in them. Donald Trump Jr. is on the board at Kalshi, and he is a paid advisor to Polymarket. Now, in my day, that would be called a conflict, right? Like, Kalshi and Polymarket are direct competitors in the same business. You're on the board of one of them. You can't be on the board of the other one. That's a bridge too far, apparently. But you can be a paid advisor. So you have that as part of the overlay. I'm passionate about this because it was New Jersey and me as governor that got sports gambling legalized in this country. The case that was won at the Supreme Court 8 years ago was Christie versus the NCAA. And we won it on a states' right basis, saying like states and the people of those states should be able to decide, do they want sports betting or don't they? And if they do, it'll be regulated by that state, taxed by that state, and run that way. And now in 40 states across the country, they have sports gambling available, and it's regulated, and it doesn't market to teenagers. It makes sure that it interacts with the leagues to protect the integrity of the game. And some of the things you've seen recently at MLB and at the NBA on betting were a direct result of the sports books reporting unusual betting activity on a particular item to the leagues, who then with law enforcement investigated these folks. And we've seen a couple of pictures from the Cleveland Indians who have been charged and some folks in the NBA who have been charged. So it's working the right way. Now, all of a sudden, the CFTC, the Commodities Future Trading Commission, wants to be the National Gambling Board. Because what could possibly happen if the federal government comes in to regulate something that the states are handling just fine? It'll be great, right? How could they possibly screw it up? So my concern about it, Heath, is that, and by the way, in the 10 states that don't want gambling, Mississippi and Alabama, Georgia, Florida, California, Texas, are 5 of them, they've affirmatively said we don't want sports gambling in our state. Kalshi and Polymarket are offering sports gambling in their state in absolute defiance of state law, because they say, we don't have to follow your laws, we're regulated by the federal government. So you're going to see, I think, lawsuits and investigations in probably 30 to 35 states, and there's going to be a big fight over this. And I hope that what happens, because I fought hard to have people have the availability of sports gambling, is that they'll let the states do their job. If the states were screwing this up, I can understand. But, you know, think about it. The last piece that we should all be concerned about is that, unlike the sports books, Kalshi and Polymarket are marketing directly to teenagers. You only have to be 18 to go on those sites. You need to be 21 to gamble on all the other sites that are regulated by the states. Do we really want, with all the problems we have with smartphones already, do we really want like 15-year-olds pretending to be 18-year-olds, you know, betting on whether Maduro is going to be captured or not, or, you know, any kind of sports game that they go into? So that's my concern. And you know, unfortunately, this child who is the chairman of the CFTC, I mean, seriously, he put out a video. I said, he's the chairman of the CFTC? Because it looks like one of my sons. Who is this kid? And he's the only member of the CFTC. It's a 5-member board. Trump's only appointed him and fired the rest of the people so that he makes all the decisions on his own with no other members. So what could possibly go wrong with an agency like that handling tens of billions of dollars in sports gambling across the country every day? Nah, nothing could go wrong. It's all good.
Okay,
McDonald's Junior's doing well.
Let's open it up. Do people have questions? I see one right there in the row here.
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, I just here's one.
Hello, my name is Julie. I'm from Arizona, and my question for you is, what are you going to have to see and what are you going to have to hear before you support someone for the next presidential election?
I think, fortunately or unfortunately, I know almost all of them who might. So it's less of what I'm going to have to see and some of what I already know. Right? Like, I've known J.D. Vance for a long time. I don't need to see anything else. Some of you might remember when I ran for president in 2016, I debated Marco Rubio in New Hampshire. It was an interesting result. For those of you who didn't see it or don't remember, it's easy. All you have to go to YouTube and write Christie Rubio debate, and you will get the clip, and I'll let you make your own judgments. You know, look, I do think this is changing right as we speak, and is going to change even more rapidly over the next number of years. And I don't think we have any idea who the front runner for the Republican nomination is going to be. Because if the midterm elections go the way I suspect they will, the Trump brand is going to be really damaged. And then you're going to have people like Lindsey Graham who are going to be saying, yeah, I always knew this was a problem. I could tell. I mean, you know, I had to do what I had to do, but I got to tell you, right in here where Lindsey Graham lives, I knew it was a problem. You're going to see it. Because let me tell you, and you know, Pat McCrory, the former governor of North Carolina, is here. I know you heard from Pat earlier. Here's what we would both tell you. One of the things that politicians are expert at is detecting the smell of rotting flesh. And when the Trump thing starts to fall apart, and by the way, when you're at 62% disapproval, there ain't a whole lot of long way to go from there, okay? Because probably 15 to 20% will stay with him no matter what. All right, so you're only 18 points left. Okay, so it's going to continue to go in that direction, and I want you to imagine for a second what he would be like. What he'll be like if you have a Democratic Congress and he's a lame duck. That combination. You think the temper tantrum yesterday over tariffs was bad? And the American people will just be like, okay, enough already. I know this in my heart This isn't a philosophical judgment. So I have to tell you, I don't have a clue who the front runner will be for the Republican nomination. But what I know is that the things that I've always believed and stood for philosophically, someone will have some part of those things in their basket. But in the end, you know, I'm going to ask them who they're going to be if they get behind that desk. And like, they'll have to tell me there's certain things that they'll do. Like, you're going to take the pictures down out of the colonnade, right? Yeah. And the plaques. Like, that's like a bare minimum requirement
gotta be
for
number
me.
one.
Like, you got to take the picture of the auto pen down and the and the plaque for Andrew
gold,
Jackson that somehow mentions Donald Trump in the plaque for Andrew Jackson. Like, there's just certain things that, like, for me are bare minimums that'll need to be done. So, but we'll see. I think there's a long way for us to go here, and we'll see who's going to be up and around.
Is there another one? Let's go back there. Somebody back there.
Guys, heck if I know who he pointed to, but there you go.
Hi, Governor Christie. I'm a big fan of yours. You've spoken in the past about how Biden in 2020 and then also Harris in 2024 didn't reach out to you, didn't try to sort of win your endorsement or, you know, campaign with you or anything like that. And so with that in mind, I'm curious, in 2028, assuming that the Republican nominee is somebody you don't like, what would it take for you to sort of work with a Democrat, or if not endorse them, at least sort of point your followers toward them?
Look, it depends on who the person is. I mean, I'd be completely open to it depending upon who our nominee is and who that person is. I'll just say to you, like, in the last election, I didn't vote for president. I didn't. I know some people don't like it, but I couldn't vote for Kamala Harris. I just couldn't. I couldn't. And I wasn't voting for Donald Trump. And I wasn't going to, you know, write in my wife. So that's foolish stuff. So I just skipped the line. Look, sometimes the parties act so badly that they're not going to get my support. And some people, and many people have said to me, that's a cop-out. You should have made a choice. It's binary. Someone just said this to me the other day in the airport. It's binary. I said, well, for you, it was binary. For me, it wasn't. So I'm going to make this choice based upon who the people are. There's a number of Democrats who I have a lot of respect for, even though we don't necessarily agree on let's say, a majority of the issues. There's a number of Democrats who I've worked with who might be candidates for president. Like, I'll give you one name, Rahm Emanuel. Like, I've worked with Rahm. We worked on TV together for a number of years at ABC. He's incredibly smart. He's tough. And I think he's a reasonable guy. Awful, foul temper, but a reasonable guy. And so, like, Rahm's a guy who I'd be very interested to see if he decides to run, what kind of campaign he's going to run. And if that kind of campaign can win a Democratic nomination or not. And so, you know, there'll be people out there on the Democratic side, and there'll be people on our side that would interest me too. But, like, you know, I got to see it play out, and I got to see how they conduct themselves. Because, you know, there are probably people in this room who were ready to support Nikki Haley a few years ago. Not me. Because I always knew she'd cave. And she'd turn around and endorse Trump, despite all the stuff she was saying during the primary. That was all an act and a show. So that's part of what I mean in answer to her question, which is, like, part of his, like, when Nikki was saying all that stuff, I knew Nikki. And I knew there was no chance that she was going to miss speaking at the Republican convention. And so, you know, she did what she needed to do. She bowed down to Trump, got her chance to speak, and I don't think she's ever been heard from again.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Deborah. Hypothetically speaking, a lot of people are predicting that the president might not last for health reasons through for the end of the year. So do you think that is going to make things better or worse? And then also, how long is it going to take us to get back to normal or some sense of normalcy?
I'll start backwards on that. The way we get back to normalcy is for us to demand it. We have to demand it. And all of you are here, so you're already part of the demanding crowd. But we got to expand the demanding crowd. We get what we are willing to tolerate. And think about how many people you know who voted for Trump. Even though they're like, they're moaning, like, oh, all right, but it's a binary choice. He's better than the alternative, all that kind of stuff. Like, we have to drag it back to normalcy, demand it back to normalcy. And how long will that take? I don't think it's going to take maybe as long as you think. Remember, presidential elections are always kind of a reaction to what we have, right? So people saw George W. Bush as kind of a cowboy who was shooting from the hip and maybe not that smart. They're wrong, in my opinion, but that's what the general conventional wisdom had become. So we picked the professor, right? So Professor Obama comes in, cerebral, unemotional, kind of a, glass in front of him. And people get tired of that, so they go all the way over here to the, reality TV show star. Biden had a chance to do something great and blew it. He beat Trump, did what needed to be done, promised us he would be a transitional figure, and then lied and decided to run again and screwed the whole thing up. People looked at him. What was the swing there? Asleep to awake. No joke. The American people were like, oh my gosh. They saw that debate in June, and they went, oh yeah, all right. Can't do that. And then Harris comes in and says, I wouldn't do anything different than Biden. Well, there's a winning strategy for you, right? So I think you're going to see a severe reaction in 2028. I hope that severe reaction that we demand is character and normalcy, not seen as a philosophical reaction, right? We get a philosophical reaction, we're gonna wind up with AOC as president. No joke. Don't think she went to Munich because she wanted to get some beer, okay? She went to Munich because she's thinking in her head, I could be president. And who can blame her? She's watching Trump. Like the standard for being president has diminished fairly significantly.
Well, we're about out of time, but I just want to take a point of personal privilege that on behalf of everyone in this room, I think, it's fortunate that there are at least some Republican leaders out there who are willing to stand up in rooms like this and say the things that you were saying, because it is difficult to do within the party in the environment that we've lived in these past couple of years. But as the governor has noted, I think it is changing. And I also want to commend everyone in this room for the dialogues that we are having like this, because Governor, it's like you more than anyone as a political leader. I mean, I've sort of 2007, I guess, when you were a prosecutor, I was in high school, dating myself a little bit.
Thanks, Heath.
But you're someone.
Meet me at the bar, everybody. I'll be getting drunk. That Heath was in high school when I was prosecuting Charlie Kushner. It's great, isn't it? But God, thanks, Heath.
Well, let me say that
Heath will later tell you what I was doing when he was in grade school. It'll be really good.
Well, I'll save it here and say, you more than anyone, I think, were someone, as I watched when you ran for president the first time, and even I think before you ran, people talked about this guy should run because look at how he connects with voters in New Hampshire. Look at how he speaks so candidly with people. He doesn't blow them a bunch of smoke. And every time I heard you speak, I'll be honest, I agreed with a lot of what you said. I didn't always agree with everything that you said, but it made me realize as a citizen, as a voter, and about our politics, that if you agree with 100% of something that a politician is telling you, they're probably selling you something.
No doubt. Like, look, I used to say all the time, Heath, that to people in 24 when I was running, look, if you're looking for the candidate who you're going to agree with 100% of the time, go home and look in the mirror. You are the only person that you agree with 100% of the time. And if that's the standard, man, don't vote for me because you're not going to. But I will say this, I know we got to conclude, is just that, look, we are going to do better as a country. I know we are. I think back now, we're going to be in our 250th year this year. We have an obligation to do better. It doesn't mean we're perfect. We've never been perfect, ever. But we've been better than everybody else. And I teach this class at Yale, which, as you might imagine, are mostly left of center students. Usually 2/3 of my class is left of center. And they all kind of complain about the country. And this is what I say to all of them at one point in the class. Go, okay, I have friends in the State Department. Secretary of State and I know each other quite well. And I want you to come next week with your passport. Give it to me and tell me what country you want a passport from instead of this one. And I will get you that passport. And you can then be a citizen of whatever other country you think has gotten it better than us. Because, in my opinion, no one has. And so we have a job to do to drag us back to normalcy. And it's up to us. You've already passed the test because you're here. Now, you've got to go out there and drag more people into this room. And this room, I am willing to bet you that by next February, this room is going to be twice the size of what it is now after the midterms. You watch. I'll be here to see if I'm right. Thank you all for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Chris Christie.